I'm honestly shocked that I even have to talk about this, but here we are. What's going on, guys? Josh Byrne, the New York sports fan, and today I'm talking about Pete Alonso, first baseman, star first baseman on the New York Mets, and he's been involved in a ton of trade rumors over the past month. There's been reports that he's toxic in the clubhouse and that the Mets are looking to ship him. There's even a recent report that the Mets are expected to ship him off this upcoming offseason, although that's been incredibly disputed over the past week or so since that report came out. And here are my thoughts on it. Pete Alonso is by no means a perfect player, but at the same time, he is doing something that has never been done in Mets history. The Mets have never had a prolific power hitter the likes of which Pete Alonso provides. They've never had a guy hit more than 40 home runs in multiple seasons. Pete Alonso has done that three of his first four full seasons in the major leagues. So the thought of trading him to me is absolutely outrageous. Unless you're getting something completely ridiculous in return, I don't see how they could fathom doing that. Pete Alonso is a guy who's right now in his prime, right now is looking at some of the best years of his career ahead of him. It's not like he's a 35-year-old slugger who's losing bat speed. This is a guy who's 28 years old and came up when he was 24 and has really shown no signs of decline. Now, this isn't his best season currently going on. His batting average is low. It's in the 220s. But he's still providing that same kind of bat speed that we know and love from him. He's still going to hit upwards of 50 home runs this year on a pretty, a pretty underwhelming Mets team and a pretty underachieving Mets lineup. And it really goes back to Steve Cohen's plan. Obviously, this season hasn't worked out, but when Steve Cohen had that mid-season interview with the press, he said that he wanted the team to compete next year despite it being a transitory season. So in order for that to work out, you'd have to imagine that Pete Alonso would be a big part of that. I don't see how the Mets can explain and justify to their fans trading away Pete Alonso, who's one of the best players on this Mets team, while also coming out and saying they're trying to compete. One of the main weaknesses last year when they won 101 games was that they didn't have a ton of power. Well, this year, they got a much worse performance from their pitching, and a lot of the players had far worse seasons offensively. But one of the main consistencies that stayed true from last year has been Pete Alonso. He's one of the few guys on this team that you know exactly what you're going to get year in, year out. Is Pete Alonso an elite player in the major leagues? I'm not quite sure, but is he an elite first baseman? He's certainly in the discussion. I mean, it's tough to name that many first basemen that are better than him. Obviously, Freddie Freeman, probably the best first baseman in the game. Matt Olson right now, I think most people would take over Pete Alonso, although I think even that's debatable because Pete Alonso in the past has had better seasons than Olson. But outside of that, it's really hard to say that Pete Alonso isn't even a top 5 first baseman in the game, because he really clearly is. So even if the Mets were to go out and, let's say, trade Pete Alonso, the odds that they'll be getting a return of prospects that turn into anything even close to the player that Pete Alonso is are very, very slim. The free agent class after next season for Major League first baseman is nothing special. The best you're really looking at is a 37-year-old Paul Goldschmidt. And Paul Goldschmidt's obviously a great player, but at that age, it's tough to say if he'll be a better investment than Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's going into his prime. He's on track to be the Mets' all-time home run leader. He's already not far off. He's close to 200 home runs as it is. He needs to break 242 to be the all-time leader. And He means a lot to this franchise. He totally does. And with Steve Cohen as owner, we know that finances aren't going to be a huge concern. So while they might very well have to slightly overpay, Pete Alonso means just way too much for this franchise for them to just trade him for a couple lottery tickets, and that's really what it is. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think trading Pete Alonso could be a rational move that could pay off in the end? Or do you agree with me that really the risk-reward of trading Pete Alonso is just not worth it for the Mets franchise at the moment, and Pete Alonso means too much to the team, and frankly, he's a tough guy to replace? Let me know in the comments section below, and of course, like and subscribe to the New York Sports Fan, folks, and as always, all the love.